This is my post-teaching reflection video for Lesson 3. This morning I taught my third and final lesson for my ESL practicum. As before, I arrived at about 7:30 a.m. to set up the video recording equipment and to ask Corel a couple of last-minute questions. I also wrote on the board what we would be discussing for the lesson: commutativity and associativity. Before the class began, I asked 3 students, Kevin, who is the sole ELL in the class, Jefferson, and Avery, if they would help me with a demonstration, to which the 3 of them all agreed. I had them come to the front of the class before I started the lesson so I could be ready to start the demonstration as soon as possible. I started the class by briefly mentioning commutativity and its root word commute. Kevin, Jefferson, and Avery helped me demonstrate this property. Then I mentioned associativity and its root word associate. Ayana, Virginia, and Kenneth helped me demonstrate this particular property. I guided the class through problems 3-112 and 3-113. We did a variety of small group work and all-class discussion. Students took notes in their workbooks, including writing down definitions and the examples I had written down on the board for them. I had planned to get through 3-116 as described in the teacher's edition of the textbook and in my lesson plan, but there was insufficient time to do so. I asked Corel later if I was too slow covering the material, and she said no, that she was okay with how much material I had covered. I was overall pleased with how the demonstrations of commutativity and associativity went. I think they helped contribute to students' understanding of these mathematical properties. I think I kept the pace of the class going without being either too fast or too slow relative to students' understanding and engagement. There were no classroom management issues as the class stayed on task and gave me their full attention as Corel had asked them to do at the beginning of class. There were 3 challenges today. First, when I started the discussion of commutativity, I talked about the word in terms of the root word commute. I made the incorrect assumption that students would know what commute means. I attempted to describe it by saying that I commute to work by walking or driving or taking a train, and so on. That was insufficient to create the necessary understanding, so Corel rescued me and clarified what commute means. It never occurred to me that students don't know what commute or associate mean. Knowing that, I adjusted my explanation of associate and associativity accordingly to be clearer about its meaning. The second challenge was during the demonstration of associativity. I selected the 3 students using equity cards. The problem was that I forgot the 3 students' names the first couple of times when asking them where to move to in the classroom, about which I was quite embarrassed. However, by the time the demonstration was finished, I had their names down. Lastly, I had difficulty in adequately answering Jefferson's question about why subtraction is generally not commutative, but that you can work around it by adding a negative. See also page 344 of the attached version of the textbook for the teacher. I was not able to come up with the right explanation to answer his question. Corel rescued me again by stating that as long as the sign of the number goes with it, then subtraction can be commutative. The alternative way is the one I described by saying that you can add a negative in order for the commutative property to hold. I spoke with Corel about it later and my embarrassment at not being able to adequately answer Jefferson's question. I asked her, "I'll get better at responding with time," to which she responded, "Yes." If I were given a do-over, I would more thoroughly research the meanings of commutative and associativity and their root words. I would research ways other people have used to describe these terms and not assume that students know what the root words of commute and associate mean. I would do a better job of learning students' names beforehand. I would make a chart of who sits at which tables so I would be able to remember their names better. Finally, I would research common questions about commutativity and associativity so that I would have a better idea of the nature of students' questions. If they are available, I would have a couple of options of how best to answer questions on a note card or piece of paper to help me answer students' questions more effectively. On a side note, I now have a greater appreciation for the post-teaching reflections. I used to think that they weren't particularly useful. Now, after having taught the 3 lessons for the practicum, I very much see their usefulness. I have been keeping a journal for roughly the past 30 years, so taking notes about what I observe and do comes fairly naturally to me. Additionally, my journal notes tend to be introspective, so the teaching reflections at present tend to show introspection as well. I think the reflections will be a good resource for me to examine where I need improvement as I get more into actually being into the classroom and teaching. Additionally, over time, I think they will help me realize how far I have come and how far I need to go. I think they will prove to be a very useful resource for me.